Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Moore-Grant, founder of the Amicable Divorce Network. We're in season 2 of our podcast. Thank you for joining us. We are going chapter by chapter through our new book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution, and going through with each author to talk about their important topics. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of this great content. And if you want to follow along with the book, it's available on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, and the hardback version, which I'm personally enjoying very much. Today I am joined by attorney, mediator, guardian ad litem, Neena Saxena, and I'm lucky enough, she works in my office, so I know her very well. And we have reached chapter 13 in the book, and we are going to be talking about the impact of cultural diversity in divorce and in the court system. And it's a very important topic and something we're very passionate about at Amicable Divorce Network. Neena, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here, and I was very excited to write this chapter. I think it's very important, especially in the amicable divorce process, because, court's not pretty.
No, it is not. So I think the preface of this section of the book is explaining that the court system often doesn't have the understanding of different populations of people, different cultures, different holidays, and things like that in order to really give meaningful and thoughtful orders. Now, that certainly isn't always the case. There are certainly judges out there that take a lot of education and do what they need to do to have a basis of understanding. But that isn't the norm, I would say. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we will jump into this chapter.
Yeah, so as you can tell by my name and, my background is that I'm Muslim. I was born and raised in America. So, understanding what's required to be an American Muslim, very different also, and what some of these children of these parties that are going through a divorce might face as they grow up here in today's world. The other really cool thing about me is that my husband is Hindu. So in our house, we celebrate everything under the Muslim calendar, the Hindu calendar, and heck, why not the Christian calendar? So we do it all.
Yeah, you get to have all of the fun holidays, that's for sure. And so that's a huge benefit for those who are multicultural. But the reality is that the school calendar follows Christian holidays only.
It does. Some states are seeing, Diwali, which is under the Hindu religion, that being recognized. Like I know New Jersey recognizes Diwali as a holiday for school, but we live in Georgia. Diwali is not recognized. Eid that just passed for the Muslim holiday is not recognized. For Jewish holidays are not recognized. It has to align, unless it aligns with the Christian calendar, and the judges really like to be able to streamline and do a copy paste of parenting plans. It doesn't fit all families. It doesn't even fit all families that follow the Christian calendar. Some families may not really care for Christmas or Thanksgiving, or they prefer Easter. So they don't take that into account when you're going through the court system, that, hey, what does this family truly celebrate? What do they do? What was normal during the marriage?
And I think when you are in court, often you have an attorney who is your advocate, but they would also be in a position of having to educate the court most often about what goes on for each of these holidays, and should the child be out of school, for each thing. And just thinking about that would take an incredible amount of litigation time simply to educate the court on what the different holidays are.
Correct. As your attorney, we're being educated by our clients. So it is the attorney's job, I would say, to ask the client, hey, what religious holidays are important to you? What did you do in your family prior to this divorce litigation that was happening? What were the dietary restrictions? What holidays did you celebrate? When was it okay for the children to miss school due to a holiday that was not recognized on a normal school calendar? Traveling culturally to back to your home country, for how long and when was that happening? It's important for the attorney to ask this, but it's also, as the client, very important to educate your attorney, educate your mediator, that these are aspects of my divorce that are so important to me. Sometimes clients kind of get tunnel vision where they're only able to see the present and not, okay, what is life going to look like? I know right now we have a newborn baby and we're trying to figure it out. What is it going to look like when the child's in kindergarten? What is it going to look like in 10 years if they are of the Muslim culture and religion? When can they start fasting? Are we going to consider those type of aspects?
And I think something I was reading in your chapter that was very interesting was that of the judges, 17, so the people passing judgment, the people who are making parenting plans, who are making those court orders, everybody has to follow, only 17% are Black, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. So all of those different ethnicities comprise that 17%.
Correct. So it's not even a breakdown of, okay, only 5% are Black, 2% are Latino. We don't even have that available out there to know what that 17% comprises of. So think about it. Your other 83% are your white judges, whether they're male or female, and probably, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they may or may not know what's happening culturally speaking, especially in today's world.
Yeah. And that it's very different when you have a family in the amicable divorce world as opposed to the litigation world. At the Amicable Divorce Network, we have professionals like you who would be available to talk to attorneys. We do lots of education on different holidays and parenting plans that our members have access to be able to use, as opposed to a litigation standpoint where the client is probably having to educate the attorney is then having to educate the court, and it's just such a heavy lift that just simply being diverse means more expense and time spent in court to hopefully have somebody understand you.
Correct. And that's the gamble that you're also taking, that if you are going to court, not only are you expending all that money to educate everybody down the line, but is the judge honestly going to consider what's happening in your household and what could be best for your individual child, culturally speaking? The best interest of the child is the test that most courts around the nation consider, but are they going to individualize it for the cultural aspects?
Yeah, they could hear all of this beautiful information and say, thank you, that's nice, and then still pull out one of those parenting plans that's based on the school schedule only off their desk and use that even after all of that effort, because you're giving the discretion to the court.
Correct. And it's more likely than not, at least in my 12 years of practice, I have yet to see a judge put other holidays in unless the parties have agreed to it in court, saying none of us have an issue of this. And that too, sometimes the judge may put it in and the judge might say, well, that's where co-parenting starts and you guys may figure this out.
Exactly. So that's sort of the highlight. When parties are reaching agreements, which most parties do, 95% of cases settle outside the court system. So when parties are doing that and are able to reach those agreements themselves, they can be designed for the family like we do at the Amicable Divorce Network. We can talk about all those holidays. We can get all of that really personalized for the parties, which often is not going to be even something available in the court system. You'd be rolling the dice that you would get anything personalized at all.
Correct. And the best way through the Amicable Divorce Network is to create a well-drafted settlement agreement or parenting plan, whichever route you decide to, memorialize it. And it's being as specific as possible, like dietary restrictions or dietary, basis. Put all of that in. Your holidays, put all of that in. Talking about when the children can miss school for religious holidays. Put all of that in. It's being as detailed oriented in what you foresee that you want for your family. moving
Yeah,
forward.
I think something that's very different, particularly with the Hindu and Muslim parenting plans that we don't have in Christian parenting plans, that's just basically what the court does, are dietary restrictions. So that's something often a mediator, an attorney isn't even thinking about. So what advice can you give to professionals or people going through this type of situation in order to address, dietary needs of children?
Ask. As simple. It's very simple. And I know you might feel hesitant, or you might feel like you're coming off as, is this a racist question I'm asking? Is this not appropriate? Ask. If you, and it can be as simple as you have a little checklist of saying, okay, what are the religious holidays that are important to you? Are there any dietary restrictions? What are the, missing school for what events are important to you? What type of travel? If it's just a normal checklist and you kind of create it in your normal language, everyday language of you're asking every single client this, whether you can tell that they're of a cultural descent or a diverse descent, or if they're your normal Jane Doe or Mary Smith that walks into the door, make it a point to ask those questions regardless, because there are some families that are vegan, right? Right. And that are Mary Smith and John Smith might come to the door and we won't know if they're vegan or not, or if they're vegetarian or pescatarians.
Yeah.
So I think if we just make it normal and normalize asking these questions, you're not going to feel hesitant. Just as we ask, hey, what are your financial records? What are, let us know what all your debts are, what type of vehicles you have. Same thing when it comes to parenting.
Yeah.
We have our financial checklist. Now let's make a children checklist also.
That's great advice. Another topic that you touched on was that there may be travel that's, international. It may be long term. What advice do you have in regards to that item?
So that is something I would definitely talk to the parties about. Hey, how often do you go back to your home country, or what kind of travel do you guys do? Because it may not only be you're going back to your home country. The parties might just be avid travelers that they like to see the world. So where do you guys typically go? What time of the year, do you go? Do you go for the entire summer? Do you go for 2, 3? If you're traveling back to Asia, you're not just going to go for 10 days. You're not going to go for 7 days, because travel days are at least 4 days going and coming back. So ask those questions, and then what type of visas are needed. And then at the same time, do your research and see if some of these countries are within the Hague Convention of Anti-Kidnapping laws, because some of these countries are not. So putting in your parenting plan or your settlement agreement that what is the child's home state to ensure nothing dangerous happens.
Yeah.
It's a reality that we just need to consider and put into a parenting plan. Not saying that something like that would happen, but
it has happened. I mean, I've been doing this 23 years. I've seen it happen. Yeah, unfortunately.
It doesn't happen with every client, but unfortunately, as you stated, it does happen. So having that assurance in your agreements will make you feel better at the end of the night when your child is traveling abroad with the other parent.
Yeah. The traditional parenting plan that a judge might pull off the shelf is going to say each party gets 2 weeks during the summertime. Often they're not 2 weeks together. It's, 2 separate weeks. And so that would not work, in these situations where people often travel for a month to visit family during the summer. That wouldn't even be available to them with this sort of standard parenting plan that judges do. So that's definitely something to consider.
And it's something to even consider if both of your parties do travel overseas to the same country. I've even had in parenting plans where I've said, okay, you guys will trade off in that country that you guys are meeting in, because if they're going to go visit with dad first, they might go visit dad's family and do things with dad, meet wherever, and then continue their trip in the same country and visit mom's family, stay with mom, do their vacationing with mom, and then come back to their home state and home country.
Yeah, and this just flows into coordination for passports. Who's keeping the passport? Do they have to cooperate too? Because children have to update theirs far more frequently than adults. Who's keeping them? What are the rules in regards to the passports? There's lots of layers here that need to be built in that need to be customized.
And also the visas, who's paying for them and who's keeping them, and how often, when do we get their visas, or do we get some type of, if the family is a non-resident in this country but still has a passport in that country, they might be eligible for special visas too. So these are questions that you need to educate yourself on beforehand and ask your client to educate you if you don't know.
Yeah, and if you're a client that is listening, do be prepared to educate your chosen professionals. A really helpful thing would be to proactively write down the holidays that are important to you, identify dietary restrictions that are important to you. And you had touched on kids missing school. You know, often when people get a divorce, their memories get really hazy. And so if you don't have that built into the parenting plan, the child could miss the school the day of, the next day, whatever it might be, because sometimes they are up late. They could say, oh, they're keeping the child out of school arbitrarily. They are never going to school, you know, whatever the issues are we see all the time in, you know, family law. So having that built in really just protects everybody and allows people to celebrate the holidays that are important to them.
Correct. And at the same time, it doesn't make it contentious for the child and having to answer that difficult question. Well, I didn't go to school because we were celebrating this holiday, and the other parent may not celebrate it anymore and be like, oh, I didn't know you were still doing that, or this parent was still making you do that. Some language that kind of seeps in, and you know, that's not for the best interest for the child. So you wouldn't want to put that on the child either.
Yeah, you touched on a really great question that professionals can ask clients, whether they're the attorney or the mediator, and that would be, what holidays have you traditionally celebrated over the last few years? Because I think we've both often seen where people are going through divorce, they make a religious shift.
Yes.
And they want that to be you know, and maybe they've never practiced this faith at all, you know, but they want now those holidays to be built in. So it could be sometimes weaponized, and that's a really great way to, you know, look at your calendar. What have you guys done in the past?
Exactly. And I think it's important to ask those questions. What have you done in the past as a family? What do you foresee doing in the future? And even asking questions of, do you guys attend a place of worship? Because that also becomes an area of contention. All of a sudden during the marriage, they may or may not have been going, and post-divorce, they do want to go, or they're going to just stop completely. So that's also an area to divulge under and get more information, because I don't think sometimes it's clear that taking them away from their place of worship, or now completely introducing them and immersing them into it, could actually harm the child if one parent is on board or is not.
Right. And also like ongoing religious instruction. We'll talk about this in one of your future chapters, but usually one person does have legal decision making regarding religion. So it's, you know, instead of just saying, you know, who has it, it's often good to even take the next step. And the parties have agreed to raise the child in this faith, that faith, both, you know, things like that, so that there can minimize the conflict in the future.
Yes.
So, well, thank you very much for this chapter and for all that you do for Amicable Divorce Network. It is so appreciated. Anybody that is listening that would like to reach out to you to work with you, how can they find you?
They can find me by Googling my name or pattersonmoorebutler.com, and my email is available, and that's the best way to reach me.
Wonderful. It'll be in the show notes if you're driving, and you can always go to the Amicable Divorce Network member directory, and you will find Neena under Georgia Lawyers, and you can connect with her there. Thank you, Neena, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.